What's going on, my creative collective? Welcome to lesson number 31. This is the initiation 4 rather than 2. So this is all about, the whole course is about perspective. Let's be real here. But this one in particular is about seeing things as happening for us rather than to us. It corresponds to a Course in Miracle lesson regarding victimhood and that we're not victims of the world that we see. Because we have such a huge role in shaping it, not just from a happy sunshine perspective, but because we are literally creating it with our thoughts. True creative power is one part, making things in the world and, having these manifestations arrive and all of that. But there's another part of it too that to me speaks at a little bit more of the energetics of it in terms of how we see the world around us and how we understand ourselves to be creators of our own experiences, not just in terms of manifesting, but in terms of the ways that we think of the world around us, but in the ways that we allow ourselves to be vessels for spirit and the way we allow ourselves to be vessels for light here, right? So it's also about that because we understand our creative power because that demonstrates on such a regular basis our capacity for light and how we can bring that to others and hold it in the world. This sort of intimidating part of this is because in order to not be a victim of the world that we see, we have to take both radical responsibility and we have to be radically honest with ourselves, right? Not just about the little things happening that would make us feel like things are happening to us rather than for us, but also in the ways that we are neglecting things or choosing not to see how we are more capable than what we may be allowing ourselves to experience through our bodies, right? We may not be allowing ourselves that light. We may be denying those things to ourselves and blaming others when we do not have those things that we are reaching for all the time, when really it is the result of the architecture of our minds that we are denying ourselves that light. So that's the radical honesty and sometimes the difficult part because, we don't want people to say it to us or tell us because that doesn't feel great, but we do have to be radically honest with ourselves. To acknowledge that you're not the victim of the world that you see around you is also to acknowledge that you are deeply worthy, because you cannot both be worthy and punish yourself with victimhood. And I'm not talking about being victimized in a specific incident. I'm talking about taking that on as an identity of everything is happening to me, right? Rather than entertaining the possibility that it might be happening for you, or there's a way that you can create from it that puts you back into a driver's seat in terms of your sovereignty and empowerment internally, right? The meaning that you choose to make of something is what I'm talking about here. But you cannot both be worthy and punish yourself with victimhood. Why and how is this victimhood a punishment to yourself? Well, because it's like poisoning yourself and hoping that someone else dies. It's poisoning yourself and hoping that someone else is harmed. Because what we're doing is punishing ourselves. We're punishing ourselves as revenge, but it's a twisted kind of revenge because we never really thrive, and it's trying to prove someone right. It's trying to prove something that it cannot be proven. The real question that, it comes down to is how deserving do you believe you are of punishment? How deserving do you believe you are of punishment? Because that is the measure and modicum by which you will see yourself as a victim, as things happening to you rather than for you. Because when you are stuck in that place, it's not about in the immediate. Let the emotions flow. I'm not talking here about rushing to a solution and rushing to fix things or anything like that. Be with the emotions and sit with them. That's part of the healing process. I've gone through enough in my life, to know this, right? Having nearly been murdered, nearly dying a second time, separate from that once, it just my life runs the gamut. So I can sit with these things and say this is part of how it worked for me, to not let these things stop me, because you have to reach a point where you ask yourself, I am not deserving of punishment, and these things are not a punishment, but the idea that I can hold about myself in the face of the challenges and real struggles is every single time. So if you believe that you're worthy of punishment, if you believe narratives of guilt, a lot of us are indoctrinated at young ages into religion that, tells us that we're bad from the jump. Right? Our existence here means that we are sinful innate, which is the furthest thing from the truth. But yet we take that with us because all the things that happen begin with this idea that we came here filled with sin, and that's just not true. So you begin to adopt this idea that you deserve punishment, that you deserve that somehow, because ultimately that's what you work from a subconscious place of. And collective subconscious, if we were to pull back, the collective subconscious is certainly one of punishment. Oh, they deserved that schadenfreude, right? I've talked about it in another video. Usually that's how we know what we want, is because we see other people losing and go, ooh, I don't want that. I don't want that. The ways that other people lose are the ways that we identify the ways that we want to win. So we get into this idea of deserving. So how worthy do you feel you are of good? Because that will also indicate the temperature that you set for yourself energetically, by which you call things that you're worthy of to you. If you believe that you're worthy of good relationships, if you believe that you're worthy of good supportive friendships, there may be times where things are quiet, but you call them to you nonetheless. You call them to you. But if you believe that you deserve punishment at a fundamental level, or you are bad, and I'm not talking about it just not being enough, I'm talking about the feeling that you are inherently bad, right? That you are inherently bad. It's so common. It's more common than we often think. I think if you look at most people's experiences, if you peel back the layers, one of the deepest fears is that they are bad people. They are bad people. That's this fear that that a lot of people, I should say, carry around with them, right? And even as a queer person coming out in the church and then transitioning, there was so much I didn't realize I hadn't yet faced when I transitioned and came out as trans. You know, when I came out in the church, there was so much. I remember having discussions with friends that told me that this was the thorn in my side to carry, right? I remember having discussions with people who absolutely refused to connect with me after I came out. This was in 2005, 2006, but it same idea. But it's just, you know, people were so upset about it because they felt that I was willingly walking into something sinful. Those same people then talked to me afterwards about how they're okay with it now. But in that moment, I had internalized something about me being bad. And this isn't to say anything negative about them, because we all have different levels of awakening and awareness. I'm not trying to mete out some punishment on others by talking about it in this way, right? But if we were to be victims to the world that we see, right? This is the initiation. This is part of the initiation, is understanding that things are for you, not happening to you. Even the hard stuff, even the hardest stuff. So just as a heads up, this part I'm going to talk about a little bit of something that involves some violence that I experienced. So just, if you might be uncomfortable with it, just skip ahead. I'm going to take about 15 seconds here. I'm looking at the time. I'm going to take about 15 to 20 seconds to talk about it. So just give me that time, skip ahead. I don't want to upset anybody or trigger anyone, because it can be triggering, but I'm going to start now, okay? So I can tell you that when I lost consciousness, because I was in a domestically violent relationship, where my ex's hands were around my neck and strangling me. I was being strangled. And I can tell you that in that experience and the healing that took place afterwards, I could have been a victim of that for the rest of my fucking life. I could have been a victim of that for the rest of my life if I chose to. And I don't think that people would have, debated that. People would not have debated it, right? But you have a choice. You always have a choice. And this isn't to say that there's one right way to do things, or there's one right way to come out the other side of things either. But this is to say that we always have a choice in terms of how we see the world. If I had said that experience was happening to me instead of for me, I wouldn't have envisioned or held tightly, even quietly, internally, to the idea of going back to school. I wouldn't have held tightly or anywhere near me the idea of having a loving relationship afterwards. I wouldn't have had any hope of having any kind of work that allowed me to spread my wings, because I would have doubted the worthiness of me, myself, inherently to believe in that. I would have doubted in the capacity for my life to be that good. And I don't know that people around me would have faulted me one bit, but you have a choice. You have a choice every single time. You absolutely do. And when you believe that you are worthy of punishment or bad things that happen to you, victimhood sounds really good. Slipping into that place of feeling like things are happening to you feels really amazing. Why? Because it means that you're not guilty. You're not guilty of the thing that made you come into contact with that energy in the first place. It abdicates you from the guilt that you might carry around with you, not just for surviving something that was really horrible, but also from the thing that made you feel like you might have deserved it, or you question whether you deserved that thing happening. I can tell you, you didn't. I don't need to know what happened to you specifically to know that you didn't, because I've gone through so much in my own life to know that you do not deserve pain. You were not brought here to experience pain. Sometimes that is a byproduct of caring so deeply that it feels like your heart can barely contain the world around you. Sometimes that happens, but it's the meaning that we make afterwards. It's the meaning we make, and that is a choice. That is the deepest spiritual initiation. If you want a baptism that surpasses buildings and surpasses religions, that surpasses denominations, that is it. Is choosing love when everything else around you might forgive you for choosing fear. Because what you are doing is aligning with a vibration and a frequency. You are aligning with a vision for yourself in your life of worthiness. Not despite, not in spite. Because you are choosing worthiness because that thing happened to you. You are choosing worthiness because you deserve better. You deserve amazing things. Another thing that happens when we release this idea of this life happening to us is we begin to see an innocence. You have to see yourself as innocent in a way, right? As in not inherently bad. You have to see the innocence within yourself and to lend yourself some grace as well. You have to lend yourself some grace through this process and through this initiation, because it will happen over and over and over again. Life, it has a way of inviting us back to this particular initiation to go deeper into it, because I think it's just a part of humanity, being human. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And I think that we need to deeply honor and respect that humanness as well, right? So, this innocence, we have to be in this innocence in order to comprehend first that we're not bad. And then that's where forgiveness comes in, where we can look at someone whose hands were around your neck at one point and say, I forgive you. I may never want to talk to you again. I may never want to have anything to do with you, but I forgive you, damn it. I forgive you. I forgive you and I release you. To be able to say those things requires innocence, not just on your part. It requires seeing the innocence in them and responding to that frequency and vibration, because that too is a choice. That is a profound choice. And in terms of now it making the transition from a rather intense topic into a creative spark, I would like to invite you to contemplate just for a moment with me. Think about 10 things. You can write these down. So I would recommend ripping up 10 little scraps of paper, and so give yourself a minute to do that. So ripping up, pause this video if you want, rip up 10 pieces of scrap paper and write down on those 10 pieces of paper things that you feel that people made you feel. I do this often to clear my energy and to cleanse it, right? People made me feel less than because they treated me like I was different because I'm trans. People made me feel emasculated because they called me by a dead name, or they used she pronouns. Write as many as you can think of. People made you feel a certain way about your body. All of these interactions where we can get into this loop of, it's happening to me, it's happening to me, it's happening to me, it's happening to me. People made me feel blank. do it 10 times on these pieces of paper. So when you have written it down on these pieces of paper, I encourage you to lay them out in front of you on a table and to look at them. And just as a side note, if you're doing this activity and at any point you feel like you might need expert help, bring that in. Don't deny yourself that. That is honoring yourself. That is not denying yourself, right? So look at these 10 pieces of paper laying out, okay? And then on the back of them, write down one thing or one keyword that captures what that gave to you. But then also take a look at the front of them. Take a look at the front of them and just really see these things here. Sit in the present moment with it and really sit and look at these things. Really look at these things and ask yourself, how much more would be available to me if these things were happening for me? I can feel it in my solar plexus. I can feel it in my solar plexus center. The power coming back to you. Just the power coming back in. That's how this activity is meant to work, is a recognition of your personal power, empowerment, right? So take a look at these things. You can throw them out. You can do whatever it is that you need to with them, because I feel like they might have an energy attached to them as you do this activity. So throw them out. If you have a safe way to burn them, do so. But ultimately, look at them. Don't turn away. This is really important to see this and to get this. How much power we give away by assigning others the role of making us feel or do a certain thing, by assigning others the role or any kind of idea that they have some power over us, right? And this isn't a reactionary thing. We're not doing this in a way that is to say, you don't know me. You can't tell me what to do, even though all the Aquarian in me is like, you really can't. But, this is really to get a good view of where we might be giving away our power. Because all of those little pieces of paper also connect to different energy centers and energy spaces in your body and your auric fields too. So when you pull that back and take a look at that, those pieces of paper, chances are they may provide places where other people can hook you with triggers in your energy, right? And that's something to observe and think about too. But when we think about creative power, what comes to mind for me is that we have so much more available to us to create life as we see fit, rather than, and this is about living life on our terms, for us, in our highest good, in our best good, right? This is about sovereignty, because this is another act of calling your power back to you. This is another act of calling your energy back to your center. So that is lesson number 31, the initiation, 4 rather than 2. So my friends, if this was helpful or it resonated, please like and subscribe. It helps me to grow this channel. And ultimately, I just want to say thank you for watching and for bringing your energy to this space. I really appreciate it. So thank you so much for that. But if this is where we part, wherever this finds you on the time-space continuum, morning, afternoon, or night, I hope that it finds you very, very well. Take care, my friends.